Discover how a surprising slap from a maid inspired an incredible family transformation. Sarah's world spun around her like the plates she juggled. Daylight slipped into shadows as she wiped down the diner counter for the umpteenth time. The clatter of dishes echoed against her thoughts, each clink sending stabs of desperation deep into her chest. The strained smile on her face felt like a mask, hiding the truth. She was tired, exhausted to the bone from running on fumes. Yet she did it all for her son, Jake. With every lift of a coffee pot or tray of greasy burgers, she repeated the same mantra like a lifeline: hard work pays off. But in the bustling Midwestern town where they lived, it felt painfully clear that they were homeless within their own lives, trapped beneath the weight of expectations that seemed to grow each day. Jake's teenage years trespassed with alarming speed, and as his brilliance shone in the dull classroom of an underfunded public school, Sarah felt the chill of panic at the back of her mind. How could she ensure her son would escape this cycle? She knew he was destined for more, yet the fading spark in his eyes insinuated otherwise. Each time she offered support, there was a flicker of resentment, a flash of rejection that stung her heart. Holding on to dreams felt like squeezing sand with her fingers. It slipped away no matter how tightly she gripped. The stakes rose as challenges loomed on the horizon. One sleepless night, driven by a restless urgency, Sarah hired Lena. The strong-willed maid had a reputation for her unyielding approach, hailed by some as inspiring, but Sarah felt a trickle of anxiety wrap around her heart at the thought. The next morning, Lena met Jake, and in her blunt yet fiery manner, she dropped the guile of pleasantries. When she found him glued to the screen, video games blaring, Lena's patience snapped. In a breath-stopping moment, she swung her palm across Jake's face. The sound of impact filled the small room, leaving disbelief hanging thick in the air. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat, the ripples of fear enveloping her mind. "What have you done?" Sarah's voice trembled, her protective instincts firing. This wasn't supposed to happen. Lena's movements were fierce, but the embarrassment on Jake's face crushed Sarah. He stood frozen, caught in a storm both of anger and shame, while Lena's fire blazed with purpose. In that second, the fragile balance in their home was upset. A chaotic confrontation of fury and confusion erupted. How could Lena jeopardize the only stability they had? As they lay awake that night, tense emotions twisting tightly within their minds, Sarah wrestled with something new. It felt like a revelation. They had been entangled in mediocrity for too long, the weight of society crushing dreams. Jake's brilliance faded against the backdrop of his reality, even as he possessed the spirit of greatness. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The broader world seemed to close in around them, bittersweetness pouring into the cracks of this disrupted narrative. The life they'd been skating through shattered, allowing for the first time real ambition, raw and unfiltered. As tension pulsed, Sarah met Jake's eyes, cries of longing and the weight of expectations coiling between them. Facing the uncertain truth of their family history, one bursting with unfulfilled academic potential, Sarah found herself at a crossroads, caught between protecting her son and confronting the fragile expectations she'd allowed to creep into both their lives. Would they rise above the shadows cast by their past, or would they cede their aspirations to the indifferent world beyond their door? The remnants of possibility crackled in the air. Nothing would ever be the same again. As dawn light crept through the threadbare curtains, Sarah's mind churned with thoughts as tumultuous as a brewing storm. The reality of her choices pressed heavily on her chest, urging her to make a decision.
She recalled Lena's piercing stance, the intensity in her gaze as she whipped her hand across Jake's cheek. It was a crude wake-up call, but perhaps it was what they both desperately needed. Overwhelmed with conflicting emotions, Sarah took a deep breath and reached for her phone, ready to counsel her wayward self through text. But instead of scrolling social media or searching for household tips, she found herself opening an old document hidden away in the clutter of her files, labeled My Dreams. When had she last treated herself as a priority in that way? Sifting through her aspirations, they brushed against her heart like gentle water, igniting long-dormant sparks. She glanced over at Jake, still asleep, entirely unaware of the internal war raging within her. Did she dare awaken the dreams they had let lie dormant? She remembered vividly the moments she felt the pulse of possibility. Writing, photography, and even simple doodles that brought her joy, but had since been muted by her struggles. Now it was time to rewrite a narrative stricken by fear and failure. In that quiet space, Sarah felt a fierce determination starting to bloom. She would take steps, not just for Jake, but for herself. Sarah grabbed her journal and began drafting a plan, a new structure for their lives. A routine filled with creativity, learning, and ambition would provide a frame that both she and Jake could cling to as they stepped into the unknown. She envisioned evenings filled with storytelling, art projects, and even online classes offering
a glimpse into worlds they'd never had the chance to explore. Each prospect was more exciting than the last, but with every stroke of her pen, a question gnawed at her. Would Jake respond positively to this change? Would he rally against the rebellion within him and share in this budding adventure? Once Jake finally stirred, Sarah made her way to him, a combination of hope and trepidation in her heart. The heavy fog in his eyes cleared, and for the first time in months, their gazes met without tension. The urge to shield him suddenly evaporated, making way for an urge to inspire him instead. "Jake," she started, the vulnerability in her voice hardly concealed, "can we talk about our future? I know things have been tough, but I think we can turn things around." "What do you mean?" he replied, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, an air of curiosity laced with apprehension in his voice. "I want us to explore new things together, things that excite us, challenge us, and maybe even scare us a little. You have so much potential, and it's time we uncover it." The silence hung between them as Jake absorbed her words, his face flickering from skepticism to a slow dawning realization. She watched the wheels turn in his mind, urging him to connect with his own emotions. But just as she hoped for a breakthrough, the weight of reality settled back in. The world outside their walls remained unforgiving, filled with doubt and the judgments of others. Despite the potential sparkle in his eyes, were they both strong enough to face it? The air buzzed with the tender uncertainty of their new pact, an unspoken agreement to evolve together. Still, deep inside, Sarah sensed apprehension. Had they ignited a new light only to let it flicker and fade again? Just before Jake responded, a text notification chimed from her phone. Lena had messaged, demanding a meeting to further discuss training. A wave of irritation surged through her. Hadn't Lena stirred enough chaos already? As Sarah wrestled with her thoughts, she knew this was more than just a family intervention. This was an invitation to confront the demons from her past, those same expectations that had enveloped her for years. Should she welcome Lena into the new chapter they were crafting, or was it time to draw a line? With her heart racing and the horizon ahead unraveling with uncertainty, Sarah prepared herself for the decisive moment. It was time to forge ahead and take control of their destiny. But who would be at the helm? How would she confront Lena next, and what price would they pay for transformation? As the morning light poured through the thin fabric of the curtains, Sarah felt the weight of the news sifting through her mind. Lena's message replayed in her thoughts, an irritating echo that reminded her of unresolved tensions. She needed to react, but how? Would meeting with Lena push them further towards their goals, Or would it reignite the embers of conflict they had only recently begun to quench? Jake was still on the brink of awakening, the faint sound of his breathing a stark reminder of the peace she wanted to cultivate. As she watched him, uncertainty wrapped around her like a thick fog. Would Lena's demands lead to another confrontation? Her past with Lena wasn't just history. It was a tangled web of intimidation and expectations. Focus on the future, Sarah murmured to herself, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She needed to break the cycle. Turning away from the window, she opened her journal again and stared at her carefully planned routines. Ideas for rejuvenating their lives bloomed like wildflowers. The thoughts felt electric, but the anxiety of inviting external forces into their world loomed heavy. In that moment of reflection, her phone chimed once more, a sharp reminder. Lena was persistent. The time had come to decide who wielded power in her life, and it wasn't going to be someone with a claim to her past. She could either let the chaos reignite or be the architect of her and Jake's transformation. Taking a deep breath, she texted Lena back, simply stating when and where. With each heartbeat, Sarah felt the tension build. This was a crossroad. She needed to prepare not just for Lena, but for whatever repercussions would ripple through her life. Inviting change did not come without risks, and acknowledging that fact sent a shiver of clarity through her. She must fortify her resolve and be unwavering. "Do you want breakfast?" she asked Jake, forcing a smile as he finally shifted into existence. His hair was tousled, and a slice of happiness bloomed on his face as he tried to process her question. Maybe they could keep this simple, maintain a sense of normalcy, even with the unsure path ahead. "Sure, just coffee first," he replied, his voice still laced with early morning grogginess. She followed him to the kitchen, where the aroma of brewing coffee filled the air with a comforting familiarity. As she poured his cup, the silence played in the background, each tick of the clock a reminder of the ticking time bomb in her schedule with Lena. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, his eyes narrowing in concern. "You seem tense." This was her moment to practice honesty, at least with him. She barely knew where her feelings started and ended. But wasn't it time to share the truth? "I have a meeting with Lena today," she confessed, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "Right," he said, a hint of disapproval rolling off his tongue like a wave crashing. "What does that mean for us?" That's when the enormity of it all hit her. It wasn't just a meeting. It was a wrestling match with the shadows of her past. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I can't let her dictate our lives any longer. This could be our chance to move forward." Jake's expression morphed, an intrigue replacing his earlier skepticism, as if he too was tasked with savoring the bittersweet ambiguity of change. "Let's talk about it afterward, see where we stand." With that agreement, the tension shifted, infused with a newfound semblance of unity. They weren't just two people navigating a world of uncertainty, but a team ready for challenges ahead. Yet, as Sarah moved to finish breakfast preparation, doubt slipped back into her mind. Had she truly prepared for this confrontation? Would she be able to stand her ground against Lena's relentless pursuit of control? The thought panicked her. There was no turning back now. She had bared her soul to Jake, and the moment of truth was almost upon her. She would face Lena not just for herself, but to reclaim her family's narrative. As the clock ticked toward their impending meeting, Sarah felt a surge of energy coursing through her. What awaited her with Lena? Was she merely stepping into the ring, or had she anticipated the power her transformation could yield? With her heart racing, Sarah knew it was only a matter of time before answers revealed themselves. And soon she would discover what kind of strength she truly possessed, not just for herself, but for Jake. What would she find when she stepped into that room with Lena? Would the struggle ignite a flame of resilience or redefine defeat? As the minutes crept steadily closer to her meeting, Sarah's mind raced relentlessly with potential scenarios, each more daunting than the last.
She closed her eyes, seeking a moment of clarity amidst the chaos swirling within her. What would it take to reclaim her voice, to exert control over her narrative? The aroma of coffee lingered, grounding her briefly, but the impending confrontation loomed larger. She visualized Lena's face, a fixture of authority in her life, transformed by years of manipulative bonding and coercive familiarity. For too long, Sarah had allowed Lena's influence to eclipse her own desires. Today was different. This time, she would step forward, not back. After breakfast, as Jake headed out for his morning run, Sarah paced the living room. The rhythm of her footsteps seemed to echo her internal conflict, resolve interspersed with uncertainty. Could she tap into the strength she knew lay buried beneath layers of self-doubt? She reached for her journal again, flipping to the page filled with her aspirations and visions for her family's future. Each line written was a step towards a life where she was free from the shackles that had held her for so long. Words formed a tapestry of dreams, each one a declaration of independence from Lena's grip. But as her fingers traced the ink, she felt a familiar pang of fear. What if Lena's cunning surpassed her resilience? Her phone vibrated, a sudden intrusion that pulled her from her reverie. A message from Lena, cryptic as ever. "We need to talk about our plans." The weight of that text felt gargantuan, each word a returning prod to Sarah's anxiety. "Focus,"
She muttered and pulled in a measured breath, preparing herself. Each inhale felt like drawing in courage. Each exhale felt like releasing the trepidation that threatened to undo her resolve. She contemplated the strategic nuances of her interaction with Lena. There would be no apologies today, no sheepish overtures. Instead, she would seize the conversation, re-establish her boundaries, and redefine their relationship. The clock ticked onward, urging her forward as she locked eyes with her reflection in the hall mirror. She fidgeted with a strand of hair, still uncertain whether the woman staring back was someone who could withstand Lena's might. But then she remembered Jake's words. "We'll see where we stand." That was the crux of it all. This was not merely about her feelings anymore. It was about forging a new identity and a different future for Jake. An identity where they wouldn't have to dance to Lena's tune, but could compose their own song. Confidence surged as she donned her coat, reminded of the power of intention on her journey of personal growth. She made her way to the door, stopping momentarily to film a motivational message for herself. She would remind herself of this moment, that she was capable, she was strong, and she was determined. Once outside, the air felt crisp and filled with potential, mirroring the tumult of emotions inside her. Each step towards the place of meeting felt like it was imbued with an electric charge. She observed people scurrying past, unaware of the monumental shift unfolding within her. As she approached the familiar cafe where they agreed to meet, the doubts that had once loomed large began to dissipate, replaced with an undulating current of anticipation. She realized this was not just a confrontation. It was, in essence, a declaration of independence, a turning point. But just as she stepped inside, an unexpected jolt coursed through her. What if Lena had a plan that would blindside her? This question twisted in her mind as she spotted Lena already sitting at a table, a predatory glimmer in her eye that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Would she be steeling herself for a battle, or had she inadvertently walked into a trap? As she moved toward the table, Sarah felt the weight of her decision settle in. The moment had arrived, and with it came the question. Would this be the moment she finally embraced her power, or would she find herself ensnared in Lena's machinations? With her heart pounding in her chest, Sarah steeled her resolve for what could be either a liberation or a downfall. What awaited her on the other side of this pivotal confrontation?
Would she finally seize the reins to her narrative and emerge victorious? The cafe's ambiance buzzed faintly around Sarah as she approached Lena's table, the weight of her decision palpable. She took a moment to scan the room, gauging the other patrons' conversations, their indifference a stark contrast to the tempest brewing inside her. With a determined breath, she shifted her focus back to Lena, who leaned back in her chair, her posture radiating confidence that felt almost mocking. "Glad you could make it," Lena began, her voice smooth, but with an underlying edge that set Sarah's nerves alight. "Let's just get to the point," Sarah heard herself say, her voice steadier than she felt. The words hung in the air, defiance lacing her tone, and she quickly appreciated this unfamiliar assertiveness. This was her battle, and she was no longer merely an accomplice in Lena's game. Lena's smile faltered for a split second before she recovered, her fingers drumming on the table. "Very well. We need to discuss our plans for the upcoming presentation. Your contributions matter." "My contributions?" Sarah interrupted, feeling a flicker of strength ignite within her. "This is about collaboration, Lena, not just you dictating the terms." The shock that flitted across Lena's face was a small victory for Sarah. If nothing else, she had provoked a reaction. The narrative was shifting. She could feel it in her bones. "Don't be naive, Sarah. You know I always have the bigger picture in mind," Lena retorted, her tone sliding back into the condescending familiarity Sarah had long loathed. "Bigger picture or just your picture?" Sarah shot back, emboldened by the realization that she no longer needed to cower before Lena's manipulative tactics. The atmosphere thickened as both women stared each other down, the air vibrating with tension. Sarah's heart raced, but she recognized this feeling. It was not fear. It was adrenaline coursing through her, a powerful reminder of her own agency. "Let's clear something, shall we?" Sarah continued, pushing her luck. "This has never been just about you calling the shots. Jake and I have our own future to consider, one that you don't control." Lena's expression morphed into one of cool calculation. "You're making a mistake, Sarah. You think you can just reject my influence and walk away? Think of your position." For a moment, doubt crept in. A memory of past failures flickered at the edges of her mind. But then she saw Jake's smile, his dreams of freedom, and the determination she had documented in her journal. "I'm not afraid to risk it. You underestimate me, Lena. That's where you've erred." Silence settled between them, thick like fog. For the first time ever, Sarah didn't care if Lena was right or wrong. She simply refused to back down. A part of her realized that this confrontation was not just a battle for control, but an awakening of her own strength. "I won't be a pawn in your game any longer," Sarah declared, surprising even herself. Lena's gaze narrowed, but before she could respond, a young waitress stumbled by, trays in hand, colliding with Lena's chair. The coffee cup tipped, splashing its contents. For a brief moment, the mishap broke the tension, a moment of comic relief that sent a ripple of laughter through nearby tables. "Watch it!" Lena snapped, mortified. Yet, as the waitress apologized profusely, Sarah seized the opportunity to stand tall, leaving Lena simmering in her humiliation. "Consider this our new approach," she said as she stood to leave. "I'm redefining our partnership, and you will respect my boundaries." As she exited the cafe, liberation surged through Sarah. No longer would she be defined by Lena's narrative. Instead, she began envisioning her own stories, the ones crafted with Jake, in a future free of manipulation. But just as Sarah stepped out into the crisp air, her phone buzzed with an incoming message, Lena's name flashing on the screen.
An instinctual chill traveled down her spine. What could Lena possibly want now? Doubt wove its way back into Sarah's mind, pushing her to question whether she had gone too far or if Lena was now cornered. Each realization left her reeling. Had she truly evaded Lena's manipulative grip or merely stoked the fires of a more desperate conflict? As she stared at the phone, fingers trembling, Sarah could almost hear her heart beating, a savage reminder that the battle was far from over, and perhaps it had only just begun. Sarah stood frozen for a moment outside the cafe, staring at her phone as if it could reveal all of Lena's hidden intentions. The chilly air nipped at her cheeks, but the cold was nothing compared to the gnarled knot tightening in her stomach. She paced a few steps, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Taking a deep breath, she made a decision. She clicked on the message. "Meet me at the office. I want to discuss the presentation details. Don't make me come find you." The ultimatum hung in the air as she processed her options. She could ignore Lena, revel in her moment of victory, but the nagging sense of unfinished business gnawed at her. Observing her reflection in the cafe window, a woman anxious yet bold, she realized the fight was ongoing. Avoidance wasn't the same as resolution. With a deep breath, she steeled herself. This was a test, one that could define her trajectory, both personally and professionally. The drive to the office felt long, each stoplight a reminder of the uncertainty looming over the confrontation that awaited her. Arriving at the building felt surreal. It was the environment where she'd always felt overshadowed by Lena, yet today it was her domain too. As Sarah entered the office, the atmosphere buzzed with the energy of colleagues who had yet to notice her. She spotted Lena seated in the large conference room, a formidable presence at the head of the table. Towering stacks of documents loomed beside her like silent guards, and for a heartbeat, Sarah hesitated, the remnants of self-doubt creeping back. But something inside her flickered back to life. She had already stood her ground once. There was no turning back now. With every stride across the floor, she felt the weight of the past lifting, revealing the woman she didn't know had always been there.
There, waiting to emerge. "Sarah, I thought you might decide against joining," Lena remarked, an insincere smile gracing our lips. "Did you really?" Sarah replied, her voice steady, a confidence radiating from her more assertive stance. "Because I'm here to talk about our work together, not just to be dictated to." The air thickened with an unspoken challenge. It was as if Lena hadn't expected this shift in Sarah. The tension built to an almost palpable level, the weight of their history rushing back into her mind. Sarah fought to maintain her grounding resolve, drawing deep from the well of bravery she had just discovered. "Let's review what each of us can contribute," Sarah suggested, her composure surprising even her. "It's about our strengths, not just your vision." Lena's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing this new Sarah who had entered her domain, a refusal to submit, a woman ready to forge her path. "You may be feeling more confident today, but you should remember who has guided this project thus far," Lena countered, her words coated with manipulation. "Guided or controlled?" Sarah shot back, her heart racing but her determination unyielding. "This project deserves our combined talents. It is not just your brainchild. We need to find a balance." The intensity of the exchange electrified the air around them. This was no longer merely a professional engagement. It had morphed into a pivotal moment of self-definition for Sarah. Each word she spoke added bricks to her foundation of independence. Lena's facade of composure began to crack, revealing a flicker of anger and incredulity. "Do you really think you can just step in and make demands? You're playing a dangerous game." "Not a game, Lena. This is my career," Sarah countered, her voice rising with controlled defiance. "And I'm tired of being in the background. No more staking my value on your whims. For the first time, a crack in Lena's steely confidence revealed the vulnerability beneath her facade. Sarah realized that the confrontation wasn't just a personal rebellion, but also a stepping stone toward professional evolution. The entire office awaited the outcome, their chatter an undercurrent of tension adding to the gravity of the moment. With each sharp word exchanged, Sarah felt empowered, a rush of adrenaline propelling her to challenge her circumstances. She could see the outlines of her future being drawn before her, vivid, vibrant, filled with possibilities previously obscured by uncertainty. Yet, as Lena began to recover and speak again, her voice laced with a simmering threat, Sarah braced herself. The real challenge was just beginning, and Sarah could feel the stakes being raised exponentially, sensing that Lena would not give up her dominance without a fight. In that moment, a realization dawned on her. Lena would retaliate, and now Sarah had to prepare for the battle ahead. Would this newfound strength hold against the storms yet to come? The confrontation was merely an opening act. The real show was just beginning, and Sarah's resolve burned brighter against the darkening horizon. Sarah's heart raced as Lena leaned back, her demeanor shifting from defensive to calculating. The air felt charged, and with every passing second, Sarah could sense the stakes rising. Lena's composed strength had always unnerved her, but now it appeared like a fragile mask hiding vulnerability, and that realization ignited something fierce within Sarah. "Let's get one thing straight," Lena began, smoothing her blouse as though it would somehow give her power. "You're not ready for this. The industry isn't kind to those who don't know their place." The words hit Sarah like a slap, yet they fueled her burgeoning confidence rather than diminishing it. Knowing she was on the precipice of a turning point, she had to capitalize on this moment. "This isn't about knowing my place, Lena. This is about claiming it," she said firmly. Lena scoffed, tilting her head with a patronizing air. "And how do you plan to do that? By throwing out your half-baked ideas in this meeting?" The glimmer of doubt flickered in the back of Sarah's mind, but she steadied herself. Each jab from Lena was nothing more than a tactic to undermine her. Sarah leaned on her recent awakening, that the fear that had previously cloaked her was beginning to lift. "I've spent enough time sidelined and watching you take credit for everything we've accomplished," Sarah replied. "No more. I've been learning from you. Now it's my turn to contribute." This was it, a pivotal moment meant to redefine their dynamic. She could feel the eyes of their colleagues on her, a mixture of curiosity and support weaving through the tension. Sarah realized that she wasn't just fighting for her voice, she was also fighting for respect and recognition. Lena's facade started to fracture further. Every sharp response made by Sarah removed another layer of the once impenetrable shield Lena had built around herself. "You think you can disrupt my workflow? You'll regret this." "What I regret," Sarah said with calculated control, "is not standing up for what I'm capable of. I should have spoken up long ago. Perhaps it's time you considered the perspective of someone who's contributed just as much as you, even while being silenced." An awkward silence spread through the room, punctuating the intensity of their exchange. Sarah took a breath, letting the gravity of her words settle. A surprising sense of calm washed over her amid the chaos. She wasn't just participating in a confrontation, she was unveiling her true self. As Lena opened her mouth, visibly irritated and preparing to respond, Sarah sensed an opportunity. This was where she could pivot from being a reactive player to the architect of her future. She had developed ideas for the presentation, ones that combined both of their visions. "Let's focus on the project, Lena. I've created a proposal that encapsulates our strengths into one cohesive vision, one that I believe will resonate with our audience. You want control? Fine, but let's channel that energy into something impactful. Lena's eyes widened, the shock rippling through her. A mixture of contempt and realization played on her face as she likely calculated how to quell this unexpected uprising. It was a moment full of potential, a chance for Sarah to transverse from doubt to authority. For the first time, Sarah felt empowered. She had taken the reins in this confrontation, steering the direction toward teamwork rather than allowing Lena's manipulation to dictate the outcome. Yet a hidden part of her felt trepidation. Would Lena retaliate with a fury that would overshadow this small triumph? Fine, Lena replied, biting back. But remember, I will not be undermined. You're walking on thin ice. As Lena's tension rippled through the air, Sarah realized this exchange was merely a preview of the forthcoming power struggle. The road ahead would require more than just confrontation. It would demand strategy, cunning, and resilience as they navigated the landscape of their professional landscape. Back at her desk, Sarah felt a new determination swell within her. With her ideas brewing but not yet fully formed, she understood that confrontation had transcended mere argument. This was an awakening. Armed with inspiration, Sarah plotted her next move, recognizing she must gather allies, confront Lena's agenda from multiple angles, and continue crafting her vision. She would not let this moment slip through her fingers. She would ignite change. But as she turned back to her screen, a message flashed in her inbox, an unexpected memo from upper management outlining potential changes to department leadership. The implications could either open doors or set her back. Sarah's heart pounded. This new revelation held the potential to shift dynamics all over again. Which path would she choose in light of new variables? The tumultuous journey was far from over, and deep down she knew the real challenge lay just ahead. As the memo settled in Sarah's mind, an anxious swirl of possibilities flooded her thoughts. The prospect of department leadership changes loomed like a distant storm, both thrilling and terrifying. She instinctively began to question how these shifts might affect her burgeoning confidence and ambitions. Would they open the door for her to step into the light, or would they halt her momentum just as she'd found her voice? Determined not to allow uncertainty to paralyze her, Sarah turned her focus to a clear action plan. The initial confrontation with Lena had illuminated a path she hadn't been brave enough to tread before. Yet this was just the beginning. She needed allies, individuals who shared her vision or who could recognize the strength in her potential. As Sarah drafted a list of colleagues, she felt her resolve solidify. Several had shown genuine interest in collaboration, while others appreciated her recent pushback against Lena's dominance. Reaching out would require her to be vulnerable, to admit that she required support. This task felt daunting, but Sarah understood that forging connections would empower her to withstand any backlash and amplify her ideas. Taking a deep breath, she fired off a few messages, inviting colleagues to coffee or lunch, eager to discuss the project and rally support. With every conversation, Sarah discovered unexpected pockets of resolve among her peers. Some shared their own frustrations with the power dynamics within the team, while others expressed admiration for her boldness in challenging Lena. Each interaction revealed a shared sense of dissatisfaction, painting a more arduous workplace reality than she had previously understood. She was not alone in her thoughts, and that realization fueled her further. Following a particularly invigorating lunch with Max, who had shown an uncanny knack for strategic thinking, Sarah began to refine her proposal. Together, they skillfully blended their perspectives, creating a narrative that not only showcased their strengths, but also identified gaps in Lena's plans, an area where they could shine brightly. As she immersed herself in creative brainstorming, she felt her anxiety morph into something powerful: purpose. Yet, lurking beneath her newfound enthusiasm was the specter of Lena's meddling. Their rivalry implied that any strength Sarah cultivated could still be undermined by Lena's manipulative strategies.
The tension remained palpable. Sarah remained acutely aware of the stalking presence that Lena represented in her professional world. Would Lena attempt to sabotage her efforts? Would she leverage her influence and control to erase the momentum Sarah was building? Sarah realized she needed to prepare for that possibility. As she painstakingly crafted her final proposal, she also developed a backup plan, identifying metrics and evidence to justify her vision against potential critique. This foresight added an extra layer of strength to her proposal, suffusing her work with increased confidence. Inching closer to the impending meeting with upper management and Lena, Sarah's heart began to race again, but not due to fear. This time, it was anticipation. On the day of the meeting, the atmosphere felt electric with unspoken tensions. Lena, with her assertive presence, entered the conference room as if she were ready to take the stage. Sarah took a deep breath and positioned herself strategically opposite her, prepared to reclaim her narrative. As the discussion escalated, the stakes escalated. With sharp words and expert precision, Lena began to lay out her vision. But Sarah wasn't merely absorbing Lena's dominance this time. She could feel the echoes of her own ideas pulse in her veins, urging her to stand firm and unleash her carefully crafted proposal. Just as she felt the moment was right, Sarah shifted her gaze from her notes to Lena, her voice steady, unwavering. While I appreciate your perspective, I believe our strengths lie in collaboration rather than competition, and I have an approach that can resonate with our audience more effectively. Her statement hung in the air, and she could practically hear the collective intake of breath from her colleagues. This was it, the culmination of her hard work and determination. But what she didn't predict was the immediate flare of indignation flickering across Lena's face. It was clear that Lena felt threatened, her composure already fracturing. The tension escalated quickly, and as Sarah,
Poised for confrontation, she sensed that the true battle was just beginning. How would Lena respond to this bold defiance? And could Sarah maintain her newfound strength in the face of an impending onslaught? The room pulsed with the tender edge of change, and for the first time, Sarah felt ready for the fight ahead. Sarah's heart raced as Lena's expression morphed from surprise to unabashed aggression. The confidence she had cultivated now wavered under the weight of the confrontation. The room seemed to shrink, the scent of fear mingling uncomfortably with the ambition radiating from her. This was a critical moment. Either she would emerge victorious or retreat, allowing Lena to reassert her dominance. Collaboration? Lena's voice dripped with sarcasm, cutting through the air like a knife. You think you can steer this team away from a well-laid plan just because you make one bold statement? Her eyes flashed, and Sarah felt the challenge weighing heavily upon her shoulders. Actually, I believe those well-laid plans have overlooked the potential of engaging the entire team, Lena, Sarah countered, trying to project a calm confidence. The data suggests that input from our whole department leads to innovations that far exceed individual efforts. She recalled the tangents of her conversations with her colleagues, the passionate discussions filled with ideas and potential. They deserved a voice, and she was determined to articulate that need. Lena scoffed, dismissing Sarah's argument. The data? You're just throwing out buzzwords in a desperate attempt to gain the favor of our superiors. There was a suffocating quality to her words, designed to undermine Sarah's newfound stance. But rather than crumble, Sarah decided that she would turn this moment into an opportunity. Lena had just provided her with a clear target. With her mind racing, Sarah took a step closer to the table. Actually, let me show you what the data looks like. She presented her proposal, confident in its structure and specifics, reinforcing her innate knowledge with facts and evidence. Yet, as she spoke, Sarah felt the air thicken with tension. Her voice remained steady, but internally, she battled doubts about whether her colleagues truly supported her or were simply watching the sparks fly. The dialogue unfolded into a back-and-forth volley. Each time Lena threw another accusation or counter-argument, Sarah pushed back with clarity and vision. She could see some colleagues leaning in as they absorbed the exchange, their expressions a mix of intrigue and encouragement. Somewhere along the line, she noticed a shift, an agreement simmering just beneath the surface, a coalition forming around her ideas. Even Max's earlier words echoed in her mind, bolstering her resolve. They needed a fresh perspective, and she could provide it. As her confidence began to rise, Sarah also struck a chord of vulnerability. "I've felt the weight of feeling unheard, but I've come to know that every voice matters, especially ours. Our collective strength is what will drive this project forward." Lena hesitated, the anger on her face dimming. Then, the unexpected happened.
One of their more reserved colleagues, Aisha, chimed in. "I believe Sarah is right. The project covers a vast topic. Diverse insights could really enhance our outcomes." Sarah's heart soared at the sight of support from a once muted voice. It was a pivotal moment when the tide visibly shifted against Lena. Yet, as Sarah basked in this small victory, she also noted Lena's shrewd calculation. The way Lena surveyed the room, gathering information and assessing strategy with the precision of a chess master, sent a chill down Sarah's spine. Sarah knew Lena would retain her influence, and this encounter would only intensify her efforts to reclaim control. The meeting wrapped with an ambiguous promise to revisit the proposal, but the underlying tension had morphed into a palpable animosity between the two women. As colleagues filed out, Sarah felt the weight of emerging alliances, but also the burden of knowing Lena wouldn't back down easily. She had sparked a conflict that might become even more turbulent. Alone in the room, Sarah exhaled slowly, maintaining her composure. This was merely the beginning of a two-front battle. To uphold her ideals amidst the chaos and navigate relationships in a minefield of ambition and resentment. As she collected her notes, she realized that her journey toward empowerment would come with its own bruises. Lena would retaliate, and when she did, Sarah needed to be ready. What strategy would Sarah employ to withstand Lena's next onslaught? And how could she turn her newfound alliance into a formidable force against the shadows of manipulation? The days that followed the meeting felt exhilarating and daunting for Sarah. She reveled in her newfound alliances. Colleagues were approaching her, sharing their ideas, and the collaborative spirit that had long been absent in their department was finally thriving. Yet shadows still loomed. The tension with Lena threatened to ignite at any moment. Sarah's resolve solidified as she navigated this shift. At dinner that evening, her son Jake noticed the glow on her face amid the clinks of the dishes. "You seem different, Mom," he observed, genuine curiosity shining in his eyes. His words struck a chord within her. For too long, her ambitions had been muted beneath the cacophony of someone else's expectations. Now she was reclaiming her voice, crafting a life that resonated with her aspirations, and she wanted Jake to learn from that transformation. "Let's talk about dreams, Jake," she proposed as they cleaned up together. "Not just mine, but yours too. What do you want to do outside of school and video games?" His eyes widened, the spark of curiosity igniting once more. "I don't know. I've thought about photography, but—" he trailed off, an air of uncertainty clouding his enthusiasm. "Jake, it's time to pursue what excites you," Sarah urged, her heart swelling with the importance of nurturing his aspirations. "We could start taking photography classes together. It might be a great way for both of us to explore our creativity." In that moment, it was clear this wasn't just a mother guiding her son. They were formidable together, each pushing the other toward personal growth. As they planned weekend outings for capturing photos, a wave of excitement washed over her. This was a shared endeavor that would ignite passion, something they both needed after years of merely existing. With every day, the pushback from Lena grew palpable. Rumors of Lena's retaliation surged through the office, creating an undercurrent of tension.
There were whispers of Lena attempting to thwart Sarah's proposals, recycling her own ideas into her presentations while undermining Sarah's contributions. Yet, instead of retreating into fear, Sarah remembered her newfound confidence. Meeting with her allies became a routine. They strategized together, coaching each other through every obstacle Lena threw their way. They not only supported Sarah's vision, but also crafted a cohesive narrative that couldn't be easily dismissed. One morning, as Sarah prepared for a follow-up with upper management, she reflected on how far she had come. She was no longer the woman adrift, silently submitting to Lena's control. Instead, she was standing tall, an architect of her fate. That day in the meeting, as she presented her refined proposal, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Colleagues engaged. Responses came from various corners of the room, voicing excitement about her ideas. Suddenly, Lena's attempts to derail the discussion found less traction. The room transformed into a collaborative space, eager to embrace this new vision. "Let's incorporate a feedback loop from our team," Sarah suggested, her confidence buoying with every word. "That way, we can ensure all voices are represented moving forward." As she finished, the applause that followed felt more like a clarion call. Lena's glare as she sat back was testament that her reign was being challenged. Just then, a colleague pointedly spoke up. "I think we owe it to ourselves to uplift each other rather than compete. Sarah's approach encourages that. Let's adopt it." Sarah's heart swelled. Understanding and support poured forth from her team, an echo of the transformation she had catalyzed. The shift in dynamics struck a final blow to Lena's attempts at manipulation. After the meeting, as Sarah gathered her things, she couldn't help but feel that she had accomplished something significant. Not just in her professional life, but in her personal journey as well. She had moved from being disempowered to being an instigator of growth, for herself, for Jake, and for her colleagues. The brimming confidence fueled an entirely new perspective. Later that evening, surrounded by the remnants of dinner, Jake shared his recent photo ideas, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Those shared moments of inspiration felt thoroughly fulfilling. She had become the mother who wouldn't solely shield her son from fear, but would inspire him to rise, confront, and challenge. "You have the potential to chase those dreams, Jake, just like I am," she said. As Sarah tucked him into bed that night, she knew she was not finished yet. Each battle with Lena had reaffirmed her
strength. The transformation was ongoing. She had conquered doubt, faced hostility, and emerged resilient, not just for herself, but also as the advocate for those around her. With a sense of calm, she leaned back, took a deep breath, and smiled at the thought of the journey ahead. Sarah felt proud, a mother, a professional, and a renewed individual ready to continue shaping her narrative. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.